A West Virginian bill passed that would allow doctors to examine minors for their biological sex without their parents' consent. Pedocon theory is a theory the way gravity is a theory. Republicans in West Virginia passed a bill that would allow healthcare providers to visually or physically examine a minor child for the purpose of identifying their biological sex without the consent of a child's parent, guardian, or custodian. That's great. They did it. They passed the molest children bill. Genuinely disgusting. I mean, they've been trying to pass the like genital inspection bill in every state as many times as they can. They love that shit. What would count as a healthcare provider? That is an excellent question. Allow a child's treating healthcare provider, because if treating healthcare provider includes like school nurse or the coach, it literally is the molest children bill. West Virginia Senate clarifies gender definition bill can't be used to inspect child's genitals. That seems to be the entire point of the bill. So this was an amendment added to the bill from Delegate J.B. Ackers. Delegate Ackers moved to amend the committee substitute on page 4, section 4, line 5, following the word circumstances by inserting the word, provided that nothing in this article may be construed as authorizing any person other than a treating healthcare provider to visually or physically examine a minor child for purpose of verifying their biological sex without the consent of the child's parent, guardian, or custodian. Well, that sounds pretty clearly like the treating healthcare provider could be the one to do that. No one other than them can do that, which means they can do that. So how is the Senate claiming the bill can't be used to inspect child genitals? Include that only a healthcare provider could visually or physically examine a minor child. Okay. The West Virginia Democratic Party called on senators who needed to approve the House's changes to the bill to remove what they called a harmful and intrusive child genital inspection amendment. It is crazy, by the way, that there are still Democrats who cling to civility when this is what Republicans are teeing up for you. The article you're looking at says this was an amendment because the original allowed teachers to examine kids' genitalia. Jesus Christ. So this amendment was added because the original text of the bill was just like, actually anyone can come on in, you know? Like you put the children in the molestation chamber, and then anyone the Republicans approve of can just walk in there, basically. And then this guy came along and he was like, no. Only treating healthcare providers get to do that. Yep. The amendment was actually an improvement over a previous version of the bill, which state Democrats argued would have allowed teachers to perform the genital examinations. Well, thank you, Delegate J.B. Ackers, Republican, for clarifying that only, quote, healthcare providers can do the aforementioned unnecessary child molestation without the consent of the parents. By the way, to be clear, this is child molestation. There is no medical need. Like, we're not talking about your doctor for a yearly visit. You're not bringing in the kid to the doctor and the doctor's like, okay, yeah, you know, get in the little gown or whatever, the little blue insubstantial, you know, dressing gown or whatever. We're going to do the embarrassing full on, let's make sure you're not dying check or whatever. We're talking about children's sports, okay? We're talking about school providers here. It's unconscionable that Republicans would support legislation that authorizes intrusive visual inspections of minors without parental approval. West Virginians should be alarmed and disgusted by this invasion of privacy. The state Senate passed SB 456 in a 32-1 vote last Monday, March 3rd. There are only 3 Democrats in the body. Wow. 1 Democrat voted for it, 1 Democrat against it, and 1 Democrat was absent. The bill passed the House of Delegates in an 87-9 vote. The bill was then passed in both chambers again on Monday, March 7th with the amendment. It will now go to the governor for the signature. It is West Virginia, I suppose. Yesterday, state Democrats, who control only 11 seats out of the 100 in the House of Delegates, held a press conference to denounce the bill as well as several others they say will harm children, including a bill to allow teachers to use corporal punishment and another bill that rolls back vaccine requirements for schools. Oh, West Virginia. It's going great, man. It's going great. The country is going great. Can I find that? Can I find that press conference? Hold on one second, okay? West Virginia Democrat press conference, and it'd be within the past week. How many West Virginia Democrat press conferences can there be? Here we go. It's just got to be anytime within the past week, right? Incredibly, I'm not seeing anything. When was this from? March 11th. This press conference should be on video somewhere. West Virginia Legislative Democrat press conference. This shit is so niche, I don't even know if it's on YouTube. I see a Facebook stream from the West Virginia Democratic Party.
For measles. There's a bill actually to roll back those protections.
They're talking about when they're trying to roll back public health. And then you have the meaningless bills. They wanted to rename Dorsey's Knob to Trump Mountain. I can't remember who asked for that. We have a bill that was discussed in committee this week that means that you can now ride a motorcycle while standing up. Boy, that's going to bring the kids home from Charlotte, isn't it? My entire generation of people that has left the state of West Virginia to go on to other opportunities because there are none here. Maybe they'll move back because they can finally take the old Harley out and stand up on it for a ride. Now, we know that that's
what the f is going on over there. Again, like West Virginia is a state where Republicans have no competition. So here, since Republicans fundamentally do not want your life to be better because they hate you, if they're like, the Republicans do not allow legislators to be adopted within their ranks unless they hate you and hate life itself. So because they don't even have to pretend to care in West Virginia, they can just do shit like this.
Hurting people so that for the first time in West Virginia code, it says that a child can have their genitalia inspected. It's outrageous. And not just children, but adults too. While people sit around the dinner table looking at electric bills that look more like what they used to take home in a month versus an electric bill, when we have...
I want to criticize them for the lack of sauce on this, but I also recognize they're West Virginian Democrats, and I genuinely cannot fathom what it must be like to be a West Virginian Democrat. Yeah, this guy over here does look like he's actually dying, like watching this, like he's struggling to hold himself up. I think that existing as a West Virginian Democrat is suffering enough, and I don't need to contribute to that by criticizing them. Does that make sense? It's a very poor state. West Virginia on its own is genuinely like a third world country, and I don't mean that. It's actually worse than, like, there are third world countries out there that easily mog West Virginia. If you took West Virginia as a, there's so much of a difference between the states, man. Like, California is up there in the ranks, right? You can go to California, New Hampshire, Maine, New York, whatever. There are plenty of states that are up there. West Virginia, I mean, genuinely, if you took West Virginia and you put it in like, I want to say like Central America or Northern Africa, I actually don't know. Like, I don't think it would be that off. Like, you'd have to normalize for culture and language and stuff. I'm just saying, like, if West Virginia was not an American state, but was another country, you would have grown up seeing heartstring tugging ads about how 1/4 from you means water purification tablets for 6 weeks for a West Virginian infant. You would see like pictures of white people with coal dust all over their face. Like, you know, your support can help. Some redneck with a 40s tractor and in the arms of an angel. Yep. With a tractor? West Virginia wishes it had an arable land. Their whole economy was coal mining. Have you seen the like a topographical map of West Virginia? They wish they could farm. They'd probably be better off if they could. Yeah, they have some tractors. It's just bad. West Virginia GDP is 75 billion. Honduras is 34 billion. Ew. And that's like with the innate GDP inflation you get by virtue of being an American state. So things just move through your state. Like, there's a lot of you get a big GDP boost just by virtue of being an American state, because a lot of industry moves through you just adjacently, you know? Without that, man, not being able to farm is literally the reason they split from Virginia during the Confederacy. No slaves to work the land. It makes sense. Anyway, this passed. Like, this passed. The original version of this was that teachers can legally molest your children. And now it's like, no, only the school nurses can. I assume that's what they mean by health provider, because they're talking about, like, you know, school events. They're talking about like 6-year-olds playing volleyball. I don't think they're talking about doctors, because doctors can already, like, if you're in for a medical appointment, this doesn't make any sense in the context of it being for like pediatricians. It only makes sense in the context of like school nurses or whatever. I think even with a doctor, you would need parental consent. I think you're right. Yeah, like this specifically says without parental consent. This states that the amendment got revoked. Well, okay, wait. If the amendment got revoked, that means that everyone gets to inspect the child's genitals. This is American politics. Any foreigners watching and laughing, by the way, I've laughed at you. Now you get to laugh at us. Now American politics is like, which version of the bill passed? The super child molesty one or the like moderate child molesty one? Would it really be better if there were parental consent? Yeah. Because in that case, the parent could say, holy shit, no, I didn't realize by enrolling my 8-year-old girl in school volleyball, I was consenting to like Coach McGrunthry fondling her in the bathroom or whatever. My bad. Takes her out of school or whatever. Okay. An amendment introduced by House Judiciary J.B. Ackers would have allowed medical professionals, I'm positive this includes nurses, to visually or physically examine a minor child for purposes of verifying the biological sex of the child without the consent of the child's parent, guardian, or custodian. The amendment was adopted into the bill. Before officially passing the Senate, Senator Patrick Martin proposed 2 further amendments, one of which clarifies that the article does not authorize certain examinations of minor children. What does that mean? The bill specifically states a medical professional can physically or visually examine the minor child, biological sex, etc. And then there's an additional amendment saying no. Martin's amendment nullified Delegate Acker's amendment, thereby excluding it from the final bill. Well, but Acker's amendment was an improvement upon other people besides medical professionals being able to molest children. What does this mean? Okay, I'm going to be clear about this. There is no broader plan here. The West Virginian Republicans are literally just pedophiles, and they're just doing whatever they want. What the first bill is literally they can molest your children. Then some guy's like, well, hold on, maybe we should like not molest as many. And then somebody else is like, well, okay, the molest child bill doesn't mean molesting children. And then that passes. What? But Vosh, it's not like they get to molest the children. Yeah, but they're ideologically pro-child molestation. Have you ever seen the like synchronicity between rapists and people who support other rapists? Like people who are themselves rapists don't go online and they're like, you know, oh, I'm anti-rape when other people do it. They just defend like broadly as a category. They're anti-Me Too, you know? They defend it as like a broader system. Republicans are also deeply entwined with religion, and a lot of child abuse happens in religious communities. Oh God, yeah, 100%, 100%. But like Republicans will never actually meaningfully challenge child molestation because child molestation at its core is built on, for one, patriarchy, and for two, the patriarchal family dynamic specifically, like the chauvinism of like the father as the household lead. So much of pedophilia as like a system exists in the context of the church, the home, the expectation that father knows best, the idea that like men and women are fundamentally different, the idea that there are like imbalances in the roles between men and women and so on and so forth. It all comes down to power, sexism, etc., etc. Very little of it actually has anything to do with like libido. They're just power dynamics, you know? This is all known. Psychologically, none of this is controversial. The idea that this is all like a deeply politicized mode of abuse, you know? I know, you already linked it to touch the tism. This bill doesn't allow any inspection. This amendment would have allowed doctors to inspect. No. The original version of the bill would have allowed a broader range of child molestation. The original bill didn't allow inspections. Not according to this article. The amendment was an improvement over a previous version of the bill, which state Democrats argued would have allowed teachers to perform the genital inspections or genital examinations. I guess those are the same thing, basically. SB 456. SB 456, West Virginia. This is in the bill itself. It does not allow any examinations of children, provided that nothing in the article should be construed as authorizing the examination of minor for purpose of say. That was the Second Amendment, Wolfie Dude 12. You're talking about the Second Amendment that was made to the bill that we've talked about. Clarifying male and female, It had grooming themes. Listen, any bill that codifies and legalizes all of these quote-unquote rules about which sex is allowed in which space implicitly suggests the molestation of children. Like, what else are you implying when you're saying, like, only biological males or females are allowed in these spaces? When you're talking about little children? Like, by what standard are you enforcing or determining that? Hair length? Yeah, maybe. Okay, so the first bill had no mention of examinations. Then there was an amendment that said the medical practitioners could examine. No. The First Amendment made was to clarify that only medical practitioners could examine, but the language of that amendment made it clear that the previous original version of the bill would have given way to non-medical practitioners examining. Like, why would you have to provide that clarification unless the original text of the bill suggested that? Which is what Democratic senators were arguing. You look what they got us arguing about over here. They're tearing us apart. I'm sure you're either clarifying that only health providers are allowed to, or that consent is not needed. I mean, we know what they're like. We shouldn't give them any leniency when you're not. Well, I mean, there's no point in leniency because they literally have passed genital inspection bills before. We know what they're like, man. They're not like us. This weird shit, man, written into law. G, these physical differences include differences in reproductive anatomy, the basis for separate sex facilities designed to protect the safety and personal privacy of women and girls. Personal privacy is a natural instinct rooted in biological realities, including the fact that males alone have the biological capability to impregnate women and that males are, on average, physically larger and stronger than women. The state should protect spaces where women have been traditionally afforded privacy and safety from acts of abuse, harassment, sexual assault, and violence committed by men, just as the state should protect women and girls' natural desire to avoid. Just as the state should protect women and girls' natural desire to avoid exposing their bodies to males with whom they have limited, if any, relationships. This is written into law, by the way. This passed. It has yet to be signed by the governor, but he will. Insane. They're talking about children here. Or they're talking about everyone, but a lot of this goes on to clarify stuff in the context of children. A public school that sponsors or supervises an overnight trip involving public school students or state institution higher education supervisor shall ensure that any student attending the overnight trip either shares sleeping quarters with a member or, if necessary, multiple members of the same sex, or is provided single occupancy sleeping quarters, notwithstanding for the overnight trip family. Additionally, state institution sleeping quarters member of the opposite state institution higher both agreed to share advance. This section shall not be construed or applied to prohibit an individual from entering a multiple occupancy restroom or changing room designated for the opposite sex when he or she enters one of the areas for custodial reasons, medical assistance, rendered assistance by law enforcement, provide services during a natural disaster. The idea that you're writing out a subsection where it's like, here are times where you can break the sex segregation of the restroom. In the event of a natural disaster, declare an emergency, or when necessary to prevent a serious threat to good order or safety. None of this protects anyone. The idea that this protects, the way public restrooms were operating in a state of chaos up until this point. Yeah, I see. I think this is probably the reason why they had to add that clarification. Promoting accuracy in sex-based data collection. A, males and females possess unique and immutable biological differences that can manifest in unique risks, harms, or sex-based discrimination, including crime victimhood, access to pregnancy and nursing-related resources, and substance abuse. To understand and address sex-based differences particularly, data must be accurately collected on the basis of sex. Failure to do so risks improper identification and alleviation of trends and harms affecting citizens of the state. Any public school district, state institution of higher education, state agency, or subdivision of the state that directly collects vital statistics relating to sex or the categories of male and female for the purpose of complying with anti-discrimination laws or for the purpose of gathering accurate public health, crime, economic, or other data shall identify each natural person who is the part of the collected data as either male or female as defined in this article. Compliance with this section shall not require the collection of data related to sex unless otherwise required by law, nor shall it prevent the collection of additional data points other than sex. So the implication here obviously being, if you legally spell out like the changing rooms and restrooms are sex segregated and this is law and there are innate biological differences, and if you have to act in compliance with this, you have to know the sex of all of the children, and if you need to know that, and that information, that's the implication. You get it? Again, none of this is even remotely necessary. Cool, I'm intersex. What are they going to do with me? Actually, there is a section for you. Individuals with congenital and medically verifiable DSD conditions, sometimes referred to as differences in sex development, disorders in sex development, or intersex conditions, are not members of a third sex and must be accommodated consistent with state and federal law. So basically, they say, intersex people aren't members of a third sex, and you have to follow the law with them. Okay. Yeah, nuh-uh. That's not really an answer. Reminds me of that Reminds me of that recent lawyer from the Trump administration arguing to a federal judge over their definition of sex and gender in one of the executive orders, where the judge was like, well, you know, this is like objectively inaccurate, right? There aren't just two sexes. There aren't just two chromosomal representations in the human species. And the lawyer was like, I don't know, what? I just hope that everyone understands that none of this is actually done to help anyone, right? The like way restrooms and changing rooms work, they have always operated on like a vague, ambiguous social code that is enforced in line with norms, expectations, and like social standards that vary substantially. You know, the world is always more complicated than people think it is, and that's usually why governments don't legislate at this level. Usually this is left up to the individual schools, who just kind of abide by social norms and try to keep people from being uncomfortable. These systems mandate discomfort. Unless you think it's okay for trans men and trans women to be forced into the wrong restrooms respectively, so that all of the all of the like 16-year-old high school girls can change alongside, a gruff like trans guy, even like pre-T or whatever. Like, we're causing social dynamics here that make people way less safe. Safety, especially for stuff this like complicated and nuanced, has to be managed at a local level with broader guidelines that are meant to determine what harm looks like. You know what I mean? Like, how do you structure these things in a way that keeps people from feeling uncomfortable? Whatever, I made the damn point. Not that there was really much of a point to be made. We all knew this was bad.